there's still a lot of confusion over the difference between the capital expenditures ledger and the ongoing operating expenses ledger. Could you say something kind of in layman's terms about what the differences between those two ledgers are, why the Spencer and MK renovations are not at fault for the possible closures of the mid-sized branches, why we couldn't, say, cancel the upcoming MK renovations and just move that money into the operating expenses to keep the 3 mid-sized libraries afloat. Just in as, I know you're incredibly intelligent, but in as non-financial professional language as possible, in as layman's terms as possible, maybe.
So when you're talking about our operating budget, you're talking about what's coming out of our current year as far as the budget year tax funding. So that is what we're referring to as what needs to fund our salaries and future materials, things of that nature. So basically, when the year is done, if we have leftover funds, those funds go into what is technically our reserve. So the reserve portion of that is it's split into 2 pieces, and we've done that via policy. One is our actual reserve, which sits in our general fund, and the other piece is a capital projects fund. So of those extra monies that we've accumulated over the years, we, by policy, have to have so much in the regular general fund as emergency, in case something happens in the district, catastrophically, et cetera, to cover our expenses. And then the other piece is the capital projects, which to date, by board resolution, you've put $3 million into. So that is assigned to that fund. So that's what I referred to when you look at that second page of my summary information as far as the 5-year capital reserve expenditures. It shows the total, projected total out through 2028 of $8 million. So if you notice in the Mid-North Credell piece, that $3 million that's already been assigned is part of that. So we still need to say that an additional $5 million needs to sit in the capital projects fund. And then the remainder of that is sitting as our reserve for emergency purposes. Okay. So does that help? So
I think so. I hope it does for folks in the audience. So I guess for future reference, let's say we, as the board, we allocate a certain amount of money into the capital expenditures column, but then later we decide that we made a mistake and that we should have allocated more towards ongoing operating expenses. Is it possible for the board to move money from the one column to the other?
No. So ongoing operating is funded by tax dollars, and therefore we're going into the the process of adopting the fiscal 25 budget, right? That begins July 1. So ongoing, that needs to be balanced. So you could allow that to go into a negative position, but that is operationally, that's deficit spending. Mm-hmm. Ours goes to a negative only in the sense that the negative piece of it is reserves. So it's the capital projects that we're expending out of the reserve. So as a fiscally responsible, ongoing approach, and it is required by law that it be balanced, that your expenditures just above the line of capital, right? Our operating expenditures are not to exceed the revenues.
Right.
So any time, the fact that we start our fiscal year and we haven't set the tax rate, you all will do that in September. We estimated that tax dollar amount in March, correct? Right, and it was affirmed in April. So that's what we're using for the budget. So in that case, if something were to happen that we did not receive all of those revenues after the tax rate was set, we would actually have to go back and amend that budget so that the budget is balanced. So.
Gotcha. And the money for the capital expenditures, if you trace it back, that originally also came from tax income, right? Tax revenue?
It did. So at the end of the year, there were monies left over that is actually moved to the reserve.
So it's up to us as the board to make sure when we're allocating money between capital expenditures, operating expenditures, that we have a long-term view of how much money we're putting into operating expenditures.
That is correct.
Making sure that we don't end up in a situation where 2, 5, 10 years down the road, we've put too much money into
Right.
capital expenditures, maybe for renovations that weren't super duper needed or something. And now, libraries that once were open might need to be closed. So that's the board's responsibility, basically.
That's correct.
Right.
And when you're looking at revenues and expenditures, you need to put something into reserve. So that's why normally you're not operating year to year so that the net of it is zero, correct? Because in the following year you're going to have inflation. You will have, possible changes to materials costs, salaries changes, things of that nature. And you know that you have to build in the ability, if us being dependent on property taxes, an even number year is non-assessment. So our revenues really aren't going to go up that much for that given year. So.
Gotcha. So I guess just on behalf of the board, I would like to apologize that we let the finances get into such a situation where we are looking at closing 3 long-standing mid-side branches, and we will have to do better.
So if I can just speak to that, because if you look at our financials, I've been with the district 9 years. And just to clarify, I actually was hired by the former director, Jim Brown, and I've always held the title of Chief Financial Officer. So I stepped in, and the person that I assumed the financials from, I thought, given our growth and really what we did with the buildings, did a great job as far as helping build the reserve. And I took it over, and I took it from there. So in that sense, really having to deal with the fact that this district grew so quickly in a very short period of time, I think it made it difficult as far as in the past balancing, okay, we want to build new buildings, what's the quality of that building, that type of thing, what features are built into it. So when we talk about really looking at our infrastructure, that's part of that, really, because the building program happened so rapidly. And here we are now where we have even additional growth in our, west portion of St. Charles County. So again, I've done my best to be, fiscally responsible and a great steward of the resources. And my team, just what the district has done overall, I think they've done a great job. I mean, we've accomplished a lot in a short period of time. We just have to really just redefine our strategic direction so that we can serve all of the taxpayers of St. Charles County.
You guys did the best with the management that we, the board, gave you. And I think, unfortunately, myself included, that management was insufficient in some ways.
Yeah.
Any other questions about the financial report? I mean, I would just say for my part that I do think that Julie and staff have done a fantastic job of stewarding our funds, just like she said. I mean, we don't carry debt. We don't deficit spend. And so I think that, to Josiah's point, having a more strategic approach that is clearly communicated and providing some more guidance and direction on what the long-term goals for the district are will certainly help us as we look at our finances and figure out what we're going to do with the resources that we have.